Yeah. Well, my first memories of coming up here were probably 56, 57, when I was obviously a lot younger than I am today. But my first real memory of, especially of this stand, is that my cousin's family came from London, and we didn't have a lot of money in those days, and we used to jump over the walls to see a match or etc. But it was a birthday treat, I think, and we had seats right up in the far corner in A block up there. This was in 1957-ish, 57, 58, I think. And because they were Brentford supporters, they got all the tickets and brought us in, and we just sat up there with all their family, my cousins. So it was my mother's brother's side of the family, his wife. And I remember the experience was something that I'd never sort of tasted before in amongst, sort of 8, 9, 10,000 crowd, with all the things that went on surrounding that. Bands on the pitch and the little man running with the half-time scores up there, and used to hook them up in the corner. But the main issue was that we lost in the region of about 5-2, 5-1-2 or 3. I've never looked back on it, but I was hooked, basically, whether I felt sorry for the club or felt for the football side or whatever. And it was from then on that 50s, 60s really, I became a staunch supporter, spending most of my time over there in what was then the old cowshed. I wasn't a big banker, but always had your place on the sleepers, to ensure that you saw what you wanted to see, and you were with friends that you knew would be there next week. And you may not see them for the rest of the week, but they were always there on match day. And that was what it was about. It wasn't any sort of travelling away. I couldn't travel away. I was only 7 or 8, 9, 10, whatever. And that's how I started.
Fantastic. On that the first years you played, or the first time, what was the atmosphere like?
Well, I remember we were in the third round of the Cup, and I think that must have been about 57, 58, and it was the year that Billy Bingham, you may have heard the story before, but he cropped Gordon Dale. We had a side that included 2 really fast wingers, Stiffle and Dale, and Billy Bingham, who was a force to behold. I think they'd played, if I remember rightly, Nottingham Forest in the FA Cup final the previous year, and the following year we actually drew them. They lost to Luton Town, I think, but they lost to Nottingham Forest. But then they came back in the third round the following year, and we thought we were the bee's knees that year. And just about here, Bingham took him out waist high, and I can still remember we could only get tickets down on what was then the Big Bank, and there must have been probably, the ground held 21,000 then, so you can imagine there must have been 8, 9 or 10,000 standing on the Big Bank, and all the kids were sort of shuffled down the front. We'd stood outside with our flask of tea from about 8 o'clock, so you make sure you get the best places. And standing just over there, it happened about there, Billy Bingham went in waist high, and because there was no substitutes, that was our star player out of the game for the rest of the game. And we lost it 2-1, and that was probably my really first, the really first time that broke my heart, if you like, because then I was a staunch supporter, albeit this high, 10 years old, whatever I was. But we thought we were the bee's knees. We thought that this was, the way we were playing the cup finals of last year, and we were winning. But we sadly lost 2-1. So the atmosphere on that day, going back to the sort of question that you just asked, was something I'd never experienced in my whole life. 20,000 supporters, sort of the majority of which were all from Exeter. I mean, it wasn't an away end. Everywhere was filled with their own supporters. It was just amazing, absolutely amazing. And again, hooked for the second time, I guess, and onwards. Everything was a brilliant experience, and I just wanted more and more of it. The crowds then, I suppose, were in the region. 21 was probably excessive. We were certainly most weeks getting 8, 9, 10s, 12. If Plymouth were playing as Torquay, we would probably, get 12,000 up here. But that was the days, and the noise was phenomenal. And it was the days of the old rattles. you know, no, and you know, it's those sort of memories. Nothing can take those away from you. You're just literally part of it, and those are the bits you remember. I mean, the kids that come today, they will remember their memories, which won't be anything like ours. But again, it's their memories, and they'll relish that and remember when we're in, you know, I don't know, probably not the Premiership, but the Championship. I remember when we were in the old League 3 and League 2 or whatever it will be in the future. I can remember Division 4 and nearly going out of that a couple of times and having to be voted in. You know, you think, well, your whole world would collapse if you were out of the league, but Accrington went out. In fact, I think, if I remember rightly, the last time that Accrington played down here, they went out the league because we beat them, and they just come back now, if my memory serves me right. But it's memories like that, you know, it happens and you just remember it. It doesn't mean anything. Well, it doesn't mean a lot to those people that you tell the stories to, unless you've experienced it yourself.
Perfect, that last little bit as well, very nice. I'll lead from that into a later question, but with obviously doing all this heritage work, do you have any feeling about that, how important it is, how useful it might be?
Absolutely. I think there isn't enough made of history of where we were, where we came from. I mean, I was lucky enough to be able to go out to Brazil, and to be a part of that was, I'll take that, you know, to my deathbed, because to be a part of that in 1914, having seen the actual play as well before we went, it was amazing to think of those names and of people that we were just coming up to a world war, 1912, 13, 14. People were playing football, but then suddenly the whole world changed. There was a team, because we were selected because other teams couldn't go out to Brazil, and the Southern League were contacted and whether or not little old ExEC could make it, and we did. And to be part of that and out there, and then seeing their heritage and the belief in what their roots are, and we're a part of that. I mean, their trophy room is something you wouldn't believe of. But within that trophy room, there's a room set aside for little old ExEC. And it's just there, and all the mementos, the ball, pictures of the crowds, you know, pictures that we now see. And having gone to the theatre and seen the play of that, recognising that what they went through, you know, even to undressing on the beach because they were going for a swim, they all got bloody arrested, or nearly got arrested, you know, things like that. So yeah, heritage is all part and parcel of what we're about. I mean, I've sat, well, in the seat just along there for the last sort of 15 years, being a season ticket holder, and part of that was the ExEC Club. If it wasn't for the ExEC Club, and the social side of being a supporter, then, you know, when your club's losing, you can sort of tend not to be wanting to still remember. But because of the social side of it, you've got other people who feel exactly the same, want it to happen, and you forget about yesterday and you deal with tomorrow, and so it moves on. So yeah, heritage is absolutely foremost in any data that anybody collects on any event, not least of all a football club.
Fantastic. You mentioned there the ExEC Club, so
Yeah.
I want to move into that and just talk a
Okay.
little bit about your role and how it came together and
Yeah.
how it's developed.
You come to a certain period of your supporter's life where standing around on cold terraces is probably not your preferred option. And a group of us of a similar age had decided that once the new stand was built over there, we would like to do something a little bit different, in as much as that we'd like a more social event, whereas people with the same mindset could meet up again, not dissimilar from when we were on the cowshed sleepers, that you knew you'd meet the same people and exchange the same views, or different views, but in a different light, and maybe have a beer and just enjoy the day on a social basis, not just the match and then go home to watch match of the day or whatever it was. We wanted it to extend it. So Norman Warren set up what was then called an executive club. Now, it wasn't meant to be an executive club. It was just that I think our generation wanted something that fell somewhere between the centre spot, which was, you know, the shirt, the boys that, you know, followed the city through, you know, they're wearing the shirt, etc. But again, there was the boardroom, which none of us felt easy because we didn't want to wear a collar and tie. So it was the chance to set something that came somewhere between a collar and tie and a football shirt. And so we set up this, what was then, like I said, an executive club, initially with 8 members. And this was in 2001. And Julian actually put us in the tribute room. He said, we can take over that. We negotiated a cost and a price. I think included in the price was a bar and food. Cost us a fortune in them days, but that's what we wanted. I think they rued the day when they saw how much brandy we were going through during matches. But after that season, we outgrew that. From the 8 members, we then recruited a further, well, we doubled it, trebled it, and we took over what is now the Courtney room. Now, it wasn't long before we outsold that as well, and outgrew that, shall I say. And we asked the club, where could we go next? The next thing was we took over a box, and we paid the going rate, and once again, I think it was 16,000 between 16 of us at that time, so it was about £1,000 each. And that was the belief that we had in what we were doing was right. I mean, £1,000 is an awful lot, even in 2001, and it was a lot. But again, we loved it enough to be able to sort of convince our wives that that was what we wanted, and that's what we did. And within that, there were businessmen, people that owned garages. Mick Groves, who was one of the ex-spinners, you may remember or you may know of him anyway, who's still with us. And people that had something to offer, had experience, etc., and would be part of the football club and actually help in terms of what we could do to support the club in the future. We decided that all our funds and our fees would go back to the football club. It wasn't a money-making club at all. And that's what we did. We decided to, through gift aid, to support football in the community. And any profits that we made over a course of a season went to support the football in the community through gift aided support. Then in 2000, well, we had all that problems with Mr. Geller, and this is the original plaque that we had with the membership, which Mr. Geller signed down here. These were the original members. Dave Bradford, Ted Eates, who sadly passed away now, Mick Groves, Richard Hancock, who's still with us, Derek Hawkins, who's around, he's not a member anymore, Brian Johns, myself, Frank Sealey, and Norman Warren, who actually instigated it. Well, that was signed in 2002 by Uri Geller and the infamous Mr. John Russell. And we negotiated with them, and obviously we were very happy. But within a season, we outgrew the Courtney room. We took over a box, and within a season, we outgrew that as well. Now, we were taking some of the overflow from the chairman's room at that time, and Julian suggested that maybe we would like to do that on a more settled basis the following year. And some of our people within the club suggested that they could knock through into the boardroom and then have an extension for, you know, people that wanted to move across to give us a bit more room in there. But I think the general consensus was that, and commercially based, was that the box that we were in was of commercial value. And it may not be the best idea to knock the boardroom into another room. However, this year they've knocked 4 boxes into one, so what comes round comes round. But anyway, having met with Julian, we said, well, what can you do? You don't want us here, when there's no room for us anywhere else, there isn't any spare room, you know, where can we go? And he came back with us, he said, right, and brought us over to what we call Togs, the Old Grandstand. And we all felt that we were Togs in those days, going back to Terry Wogan. And when we came in, it was just a nightmare, because in the Russell and Lewis era, I think there was a franchise down in the family's room whereby he'd let a group of supporters form a steak bar. And for whatever reason, the franchise was undermined. I think they didn't pay up or something happened, and all the memorabilia that was in there, etc., and the people who had actually bought into it weren't happy at all, because they were moved out, and they literally trashed the place. All the ceiling tiles were down. Everything was ripped off the walls. There was nothing really of any consequence there, and as I say, the whole place was turned into a storeroom for lawn mowers and engines, etc., that the ground staff were using. So it was a bit of a shock to have left a box and then be offered a room over here. We managed to get the lights working, got everything on, and walked through. The centre room was still more or less the same as it was. And then the room at this end, which obviously was in better condition, we said that we would see if we couldn't do something within the close season to bring it back to life. And we got rid of all the stuff, put up new tiles, painted the walls, got some memorabilia in, and from that day onward, that's been our home. That was in 2003. In 2004, we relaunched the executive club, as it was then, because of the name. We weren't executives. We never wanted to be known as executives. We didn't have any more money than anybody else, which is what people thought. We hadn't done a deal with the football club. We were just ExEC, EXEC, X, River X, EC, Exeter City. So we called ourselves the ExEC Club, and because of the 100 seats that we have here, we called it the 100 Club. We would recruit 100 members, each paying £100, and we would launch it in the centenary year, which was the 100 years, which was in 2004. And we've never really looked back. We've always had between 60 and 100 members over here, many of whom have still buying their season tickets. And those that didn't have season tickets always had a seat over here. We always had the lounge downstairs where we could entertain through the week as well. We've had some superb parties down there with various people. We've met various dignitaries from the football world who've come down there, even from the Brazil team that came over here, to Harry Redknapp when he brought Portsmouth down. We've got memorabilia that they've all handed over. So very, very, very many memories of how this came to be and where we are today. Now, sadly, we've got to move again. And as we know, there isn't a lot of room presently for us, so we're looking to pick ourselves up, dress ourselves down, and move to the other side of the ground, where hopefully we continue to support the football club in the way that we always have done over the last 15 years. So that's our little bit of history, really.
That's fantastic, Frank. That's spot on. I think a lot of people we've spoken to have kind of described the Old Grandstand as a bit of a rabbit warren. When you see it from the outside, what most people like from the big bank will see, or from over there, they'll sort of see the seats and stuff. But underneath, as we know, there's quite a lot going on down there. Would you say the same?
Absolutely. Well, from historically, the VIP club was run at the end bar. And if you can imagine the seats, the sort of level of the seats, there is quite a lot of space down there. But being built on the side of a hill, that space is slightly reduced. So nothing is easy, nothing is flat, and nothing is as you would expect it to be in terms of nice little boxes. So a rabbit warren would certainly fit the bill. So in that end, where the VIP club was back in the, when I first joined it in the 80s, was the end room. They had their own bar, access from the jungle path, which is the path from behind. And then there was the central room, if you like, which was the players' lounge. And the nice thing was that everybody in the stand could meet the players and their families, etc., and go down for a cup of tea or whatever it was during the match or after the match. And all this went on again behind the VP lounge as it was then. The kitchens were there, so all the food for all the dignitaries or the guests and sponsors was all cooked in there. And again, people, I'll quickly mention the longest-serving barmaid that's here, Sheila, who's now works over in the top bar over there. She was running the sponsors bar and really did as much as anybody to make you feel at home over in this side of the grass. But because of all these little boxes, etc., and the toilets, you either had a sloping roof where you had to bend down, or you had a kitchen which was sort of quite compact, or you had a room which was never ever square. When you came into the centre room, again, it was just a box, really, where people came into, the players and their wives used to come in just to relax. And then the end room, which was where all the sponsors used to have their meals. So you can imagine it's not the biggest space in the world, but within it, I mean, people had meals, people had the bar, you had just to the end of that, the dressing rooms. And I'm sure that people will recognise the very fact that the Liverpool manager snuck into this interview room, which was shared with the tea ladies. And again, another box within another area. Beside that, there is the treatment room, which again is another slightly weird shape. And then, of course, you've got the dressing rooms to the end of that. So there is no space that hasn't been utilised, whether it be a dressing room, a players' room, a tea room, stroke interview room. The old players' room is now has been the media room. Although I don't think Tiz used to like having to come through the ExEC club to go for his interview afterwards, etc. So I don't think that lasted very long. But it was just generally where the rooms were. There was no corridor to it. You had to go from one room to another by going literally through the room. But that's the history of the place. That's why we love it, because there wasn't any locked doors. There wasn't any area that you couldn't go to. Everybody was able to go where and how they liked, within reason, of course, because if you weren't a sponsor, you'd have to get past the doorman. And if you weren't a VP member, then you'd have to get past Brian Johns on the door, or Archie Hartshorn or somewhere. So although everybody did their bit, I'm sure most people found it an experience to be in any one of the rooms at any time, whether it be at a football match or after a match or even before a match. But certainly those days won't be relived again. It was absolutely magical times, and I'm sure there'll be magical times to come. But those are the memories that I have.
Those magical times that you talk about, do you have like any particular anecdote that just sort of sum it up, what it was like down there? What was it like down there on a day?
Well, we've had quite a few parties down there. There's no doubt about that. Normally at the end of season, we're always well behaved. No swearing. No. Anecdotally, I suppose. Well, no, not. It's very difficult because I always assume everything to be the norm, and people said, "You didn't do that." I said, "Well, it was just what you did." But I can't think of anything really offhand that would shock or. Although it was great to have different people coming in to see us, and then, sort of them not believing what a nice little community we had there, basically.
That's cool. And in there, I take people in there who don't normally come to this part of the stadium. So all quite distinct.
Indeed, yeah.
And some people are always really amazed by the ExEC Club, and it's almost like the closest thing we've got at the minute to
A museum.
Can Can you describe
Well, again, over the years, we went the exec club. We always went everywhere together, more or less. And if we went to the end of season ball, as it's called now, or the end of season, whatever it was, the commercial teams always had memorabilia either for sale, and of course our money was the club's money, so it always went back. There were various people that went to away games, various people that bought shirts, and various people that recognised that somebody might want to see a ball that was kicked by Nobby Styles or whatever, and so a collection started. I suppose one of the earlier issues with when I mentioned the fact that when the place was ransacked, we did find in some of the cubby holes pictures that were no longer considered to be worthy of putting on walls, but now we recognise that 1911, 1912 and all those older dates and all those photographs really actually do provide us with an historic view, and they've all been, as well you know, documented now. But sadly, I suppose we went through a period where history didn't mean anything. But thankfully that's come back, and now the exec club, with all the collections that we've made over the 15 years, whether it be the sign that we didn't ask for, we demanded that the sign that says Old Trafford welcomes ExEC City was actually ours, and we would buy it if needs be. But a little bit of anecdote, if you like, that they brought it down, Manchester United brought it down for us and presented it to us when they played here in the replay on the team coach, because we'd made such a demand, the big yellow sign saying, which was the away ends turnstiles. And we've got it down there in the wall. We've got pictures that we took, the dinners that we had at Wembley, the two trips to Wembley where we lost one and won one. They're all part and parcel of the club. I mean, it's not just the exec club. It's just something that we felt, because we were a close-knit community, that we would collect and yeah, as you quite rightly say, probably more of a museum of the various things that we as a group achieved and did together, which will hopefully, you know, be part of the new, or the museum of the future, if you like.
got a favourite little item down in there, apart from the Man United sign?
Well, Brian the Lion was my little favourite. He came to Brazil with me, bless him. And he met all the players in Brazil, Dunga and all the various things. But no, I think the Pele shirts, meaningful. I suppose Manchester United's got a big thing when you consider how important that was to the football club, and at the time where we were in a position that we didn't want to be in, but then the good Lord or whoever looked down upon us and said, right, okay, this is what you deserve, this is what you get. So I think that would be probably the most important piece down there. We've got a couple of Pele shirts signed, etc., and the Brazil items, which I'm, you know, obviously very proud to be a part of that. And of course, Brian the Lion, who came out with us, and he's on various videos on YouTube now these days. And apparently, now that England have taken a lion out to France, he's had about 50 hits thinking it's the same one, but it's not. Ours is Brian the Lion, and theirs, I believe, is Leo the Lion. But who cares? Ours is more famous.
Brian's clearly better. You mentioned the Man United game there, and as a fan, you've been coming here a wee while. Is that one of the best occasions you've ever had up here? What was that like, and is there a comparable occasion to you? Is there a better
Well,
occasion?
again, I suppose in its time, the Luton match in 58 was as important to me as a young lad as the Man United one was to me when I was, well, in my but I think Man United was special in various ways. Foremost because it was the biggest team in the land. We'd drawn them in the cup, and that we were away. Nobody gave us a chance. We were in the conference. We just come out of it. Well, we were going through administration. Everything was against us. But it was our day out, our day to go up north and cheer. And 40,000 of us, or 30,000 of us, were up there. And it was just an amazing day, an amazing experience. And I can still see now, turning to Dave Bradford, one of our members, because we all went up together. We just hugged each other, crying when we saw that score, 0-0, knowing that we were coming back here, and how close we were to actually winning it. Had Taylor hit the shot that he hit, the other side of the post, it wouldn't have been saved, and we may have been through. But you know, the likes of Ronaldo and well, all the players that everybody remembers, then to come down here, and we gave them a good game. But I suppose our chance was up there, and that's what will always be remembered. We could have and should have probably maybe won it, whether we deserved to win it or not, but what a story that would have been. And then to draw on another big club the next time. And it's always good to play at home, but it's really great to get away and just be a part of what was then, I think it was a 70,000 crowd. But they did say that when we were in we were having a meal before the game, and of course everybody was coming up and wishing us well, etc. And sorry you come all this way, this was before the game. But of course we said, well, yeah, it's our Wembley, it's our day out. And we asked what sort of crowd they were expecting. They said, well, it's the third round of the cup, but your only conference probably be 20, 30,000 maybe. Well, then what we didn't realise, the tickets for one of their Euro Cup went on sale that night, and so it was a full house. They had to get their vouchers for the game, for the next Euro game. And of course, it was actually 60, I think it was 62,000, 63,000, something like that anyway. And it was just amazing to be a part of that. Up in the one corner or the way end, we made as much noise there, as we always seem to do, than you ever heard at Manchester on the telly, because they're not the most vociferous of home sides. But with us there, I think livened it up. To see that, I can still see that scoreboard now, after 90 minutes, 0-0. Brilliant. So yeah, that'll always ring true. And of course, our trip to Brazil will always remain with me always. But I suppose those are the biggest three: Luton and Nottingham Forest in '58, Brazil, and Man United, the three big times.
Check down here. See where we're going with this one. Yeah. What's the best atmosphere you've ever experienced in this particular stand? What brings the best out of this stand?
I think just recently, with now the junior Grecians up that end, when they were over there, you know, kids have got their own sort of level of shouting, etc., which you couldn't ever hear over here. I think because the stand is pointing out the volume is never the same. When they're in here and you get everybody shouting, "We are ExEC, we are ExEC," it's brilliant. The place throbs, and I think some of the against Port Vale, I remember this last season when we went. When we beat them here in the FA Cup, was a great experience. I mean, there's been so many really, but certainly I suppose you remember the last ones. And when we stayed up, I think there's a lot of pictures depicting the fact. I think it was Rotherham, the last game of the season when we stayed in League One. That was some sort of day as well in terms of sound in here, because it does tend to stay in this side, whereas over the other side it tends to move out. So it does seem particularly quiet over there. And I think they should go into some of the design as well of stadia, where, you know, the sound can be, you know, like this, with a downward sloping roof. That sound is actually, it can go to the pitch, but it also rebounds back on you. So that makes it even more exciting. But I suppose we were over that side for the Man United game, but although the noise was as good as would ever be, I suspect, I still remember the sort of the games, end of season games, where we got into the playoffs or saved ourselves in League One. I think, as I said, it was against Rotherham. And it was matches like that. It can be quiet here sometimes, but I think this season, with the advent of the group on the big bank now, that's endeared people to get behind the side a little bit more. But I wouldn't say we're quiet supporters, but once we get going, we're pretty much as good as anybody.
That's fantastic. You mentioned the group over there, I think the Red Legion.
Red Legion, yeah.
They had, is there sort of a connection to Red Legion over
Well, what we try to do, because of my work with football in the community as well, is that obviously the inception of the junior Grecians at that end and raising the profile of them, it lent us to recognise that there is a group and that, for instance, the junior Grecians, the age group for them is anything, because they're also trust members, or anything between 0, as soon as they're born, mums and dads actually sign them up all the way through their lives. But basically, coming to a game, they range from anywhere between 5 and 6, up to the age of 18. Now, when you're of an age, a certain age that is, you don't particularly want to chase a lion around. And we recognise that, in as much as that up to the age of 13 maybe, you're part of that group. And so because junior trust members are also junior Grecians are also trust members, we're trying to work out how we can involve the group such as they are in terms of the 14 to 18s, which a lot of them are. And so we're looking at maybe setting another tier of junior Grecians whereby we can get them together to have a sort of a youth club type club during midweek, or get away to away games. It's not easy to do in terms of I've always believed that anything like that needs to come from them, and if that's what they want, then it will happen anyway. If you get some old fuddy-duddy like me who said this is what should happen, it ain't never going to happen. But I think it's recognised that there are various groups that need to be catered for. When you're 14, you're happy to be chasing the lion. When you're 14 to 18, you've got other ideas that you want to be, whether it's, bowling, a youth night, watching telly, watching football, going to away games, whatever. And because we're a trust, and because everybody belongs to the same community, if you like, it's right that we should be looking towards helping everybody within that community from cradle to grave, I've always said. If you're part of it, then you need to be feeling you're part of it and not just left out. But I think the guys that have been running it, we've been in contact. They recognise that season ticket holders, under 18 season ticket holders, are junior trust members automatically. They can either be a young junior Grecian and attend all the parties and all the events that Scotty puts on for them. For the older age group, we've got to find something that they will feel comfortable with, and therefore, hopefully this season, hopefully the membership will grow again, and we will include them. Maybe one of them needs to come to the fore and say, look, this is what we feel that we need and what we would like the club to support us doing. Yeah, that's what we're here for.
That's cool. That's really cool. I want to come back to this little bit now, your match day domain.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if you could tell me a little, do you know anything about the history of it?
Well, I've talked to Ivor Doble, and he spent many hours over here with us at the beginning, because obviously when it was built, it was just as it is. It was just a stand. There was nothing under it. And he delights in the story about how he actually carried, him and a group of the directors carried the breeze box up and actually built what you see underneath. Hence the little boxes and whatever. But again, part of the history was Ivor. He was very much part of it. He was the chairman in those days. and even I don't know when that was when he actually took part in that. Must be in the 20s or 30s maybe, I don't know. So it was just a basic stand. But of course all these seats here were a part of the director's box, and just down the stairs there, that was the director's room where they had their meals, etc., etc. And we feel privileged that we now use this. But in the days then the directors were here, this was where, if we won anything, the players used to come out the dressing rooms, and that was our sort of Wembley bit there, if you like, holding the cup aloft or whatever it was we won. And again, it's historical. It's the seats have had some special names sitting on them, I guess. I'm hoping that we might be able to purchase a couple of these for posterity. I don't know whether they'll all fit in the museum or whether we can take it down and build it somewhere else or whatever. But everything here has a history to it. A lot of it hasn't changed. We've still got the wooden floors. We've still got exactly the same old boardroom with not too much change, with the bar in the corner. We've still got exactly the same things downstairs with little or no change since it was built and then obviously refurbished at different times. But no, it is what it is, and it is still what it was, if you like. The same roof, the same asbestos. Hopefully the wind doesn't blow it all down. The same corrugated iron behind us. Nothing has changed. It's like you're in a time warp. But it's home, and it's been great being here for 15 years. But again, I guess that a lot of the Ivor Dobles and the other, directors of the club also have got fond memories of it. A lot of hard work, I guess, because they tell us it was hard work in those days. There was nobody to help. There was no big diggers or anything. Everything had to be done by hand. It was up you had a road down there and a stand where people came in to sit with nothing else underneath it. And if you wanted anything built, you had to get up and do it yourself, which is what they've done.
That's fantastic. That's really interesting. Thank you, Frank. I'll do a few quick hits, a few quick ones.
Oh, God.
Just to finish this off.
Where's me Thatchers?
I owe you.
No.
I'll buy you a cup.
No.
What's the best team/era for you as an ExEC fan?
Best team? I suppose the team that I remember most is the Banksy days. But Banksy was a one-off. But I remember, as I said earlier, I suppose I can almost go through this in the late 50s, early 60s, with Stiffle and Gordon Dale, George Hunter in goal, Keith Harvey. Our captain, who the box after him, Arnold Mitchell, yeah, whose name is all those sort of players I still relate to, because I suppose that was my childhood, and I worship them as heroes, if you like, and they are still my heroes. But of course, as you get older, you recognise that they're just people. But when you were young, you looked up to them and you thought that they were something special, and especially, well, they were special, and they made it special. These days, I guess, you've got the Rooneys and all the guys, and they're on mega bucks, etc. That isn't, to me, what football's about anymore. It's about supporting the side that were part of you. They went to work, they were postmen, they were doing whatever. It was a job that they used to do as well as, not instead of. And so that era probably is my favourite era. In the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s, like I said, the Gordon Dales and the Nelson Stiffles and Graham Rees. Ted Calland is another name that comes up with, George Hunter. All of those, I can still visualise and still see them playing, albeit with their big toe cap boots. Yeah, I remember Ted Calland breaking the net down there, put a ball through the net. Ted Calland was our old centre forward, late 50s, and he broke the net with one of his shots. That was with the old toe cap boots on. Yeah, and was the days.
Good old fashioned toe cap.
Yeah, God, yeah, with a leather ball.
Heavy.
When it was raining. Yeah.
If you could put one player into the ExEC Hall of Fame, who would you put in it?
Ooh, that's a difficult one.
You can change your mind next time.
No, I suppose Alan Banks would be up there. He brought so much pleasure to the city. I suppose Tony Kello. I got fond memories of Kello. Oh, that's anecdotal. Tony Kello, once he'd retired, he'd come back and he'd come to the ExEC club to meet up with his best mate, Joylo, and they were having a beer down there, and we knew that Tony was going to have a few that afternoon, but he was up here especially for his daughter, well, his christening of his granddaughter, in actual fact, his daughter's daughter. And I'd invited a few people up from, I live at ExEC, and I invited a few people up from the Thatch. And Tony Keller was here anyway, and he was going home, and then he was coming up to the, coming back. I think he must have been living somewhere or staying somewhere in Exeter, but by the time 5 o'clock come, he'd forgotten where he was living anyway, and he had to get out to, I think it was Columpton, where the christening was going to be, and he was absolutely out of it. And 2 girls that I brought up who live in ExEC. In fact, there was about 6 or 7 of us from ExEC, but these 2 girls who live together, they love Tony Kello. They're actually northern girls, and one of them supports Bolton, and they'd heard about Tony Kello, but they just fell in love with all his little stories, etc., etc. So they said to him, Tony, why don't you come back to us and we'll have a few beers in the Thatch, and then if you can't get home, we'll get you a taxi. If you can't get home, we'll make sure you're all right. Well, we did. We all went back to the Thatch, and he had a few more. And by that time, he was past being out of it. He was absolutely thrashed. Well, anyway, they took him home and put him to bed. And we still don't know to this day whether he got to the christening to the next day. But they put him in a taxi at 9 o'clock in the morning, told the taxi driver where to go, and that's where he ended up. But that's something. I mean, Tony Kello, he was a character in his own right. Good when he was good, but boy, could he knock him back. Bless him.
I think I was with, what's his name? Bernard. He'd done a lot of the building work around here.
Oh, yeah.
And he said the Kells used to come and watch the football. The postmen used to all congregate down.
Yeah, on that corner. Well, in fact, when you used to have the band, all that area, we used to have the railway band playing. And I think there was little tiered areas there. Now, it's never been very much because, you know, where it is and what it is. But the band used to congregate there and do their marching at half time and etc. And then the postmen actually took over, and they used to come there. And the postmen used to use that when they come off their shift on a Saturday or whatever. But it used to be the meeting point for most of the posties. But of course, Tony Kello, he was renowned because he was running before the big bank stand was built. We had the what was then the centre spot, and it moved that many times. But Bernard actually built the centre spot, removed it from the top and put it down the back, so they had more standing room, etc. But Tony Kello then took over running the bar. I think that's a completely new. That's a complete book in its own right. So you'd have to ask other people about that. But Bernard, because of his experience and knowledge of doing things, actually negotiated so many things with regards to the buildings, etc., which they were all free to the club because that's what Bernie did. And I think a lot of us did. But any way that we could find something that you could get for nothing, because we knew the club never had that much money, it would just, you used to win it. But Bernard did a lot in terms of the club facilities that were behind the stand, which used to be the old, I think the bit that they're talking about, well, they've sold on already, but it used to be the training ground. It used to be literally a postage stamp with, I don't think it was wide enough to put up a goalpost, it was that bad, but they used to have a little kicking in area that the players used to use just behind their curve. And you think of that, and you think what they got, the facilities they've got today, and you think, well, that was, in the 50s, that's what they had, literally either go kick around on a park or behind the pitch. But of course, that was taken over, and I said the centre spot was built there. It went on top of the stand and then went down again. But yeah, the Postie boys, they were all very social and darts players, etc. So Tony Callow and a lot of the guys. I think Johnny Delve, he was in the post office as well. And in fact, even down here, Steve Gibbons, who's our membership secretary, he was ex-postie, and it's quite strange that a lot of them still come today. And I've got quite a few of them at ExEC, and it was almost like a posties reunion down there last season when I brought a couple of friends up, and they all turned out to be ex-posties who knew each other. I thought, God, you can't get away from them. So I think that still extends today. You know, there's still a lot of people and in fact a lot of players, they used to move into the postie areas, and yeah, that's where they used to be. That used to be their little area where they used to congregate and have a beer. I think they used to be able to get into the VP's club for a pint afterwards. That's what it was all about.
That's right. Just one thing I wanted to, before I ask my final question, but the VP's club, the Vice President's Club, what was that all about?
Well, again, it was in the old days. I don't know how it started, but a lot of clubs had them, and it was again, it was the club that was somewhere between the boardroom and the supporters. So vice presidents, I think, initially or originally paid an upfront fee to become a member, but you were considered to be a sponsor of the club, if you like. But for that, it was almost like a charitable thing where you had your own bar, but it was the forerunner to what we got now, the ExEC Club. And having been part of that when I moved over, the guy that introduced me, Bill Diamond was his name, and he, very smart, wore the city blazer with the badge on, met everybody at the door, invited them in, and introduced you to whoever was in there, dignitaries, etc. And he used to host. It may happen in larger clubs today, I guess, but not to the extent when we're talking about, 60s and 70s, where you had that one person who was very knowledgeable, who was devoted to the club, probably had retired, and the vice presidents, having paid some sort of fee for the season, would actually support the club through their charitable work or whatever. But it was more so people that had businesses, I guess, had a little bit of spare money, and would support the club through various ways. If it wasn't through financial help, it was through their knowledge of how to get things done, and it was that sort of environment. But for whatever reason, I know other clubs used to have VP clubs, vice presidents clubs, and I'm not quite sure of the history of it, but my guess was always that being part of that, you were almost just below the boardroom, if you like, but you were allowed to join as long as you had something to offer. I was lucky enough to come in because I could talk a lot. And I knew the bloke who was running it. All right.
Brilliant. There's actually two more questions.
That's every time you say one, there's one more.
No, it's two. It's gross. Two. Okay, first one. Will you miss it?
Will I miss what?
This stand, if it goes.
Well, yeah, I thought you knew something that I didn't know there from it.
If it goes, would you miss it? Character?
Yeah, I think everything changes, nothing stays the same. But what's lovely about being somewhere which isn't going to be there anymore is your memories. And your memories are what you take with you through life. At the end of the day, nothing lasts forever, not least of all people. And so at every stage of the way, when things change, I remember my first time here when sitting up there. I remember seeing it and thinking, God, I've never seen like it. But it wasn't, you couldn't compare this to in the days like Wolverhampton Wanderers or Sunderland with massive great gowns. This was our stadium, and it was the best in the world. And that's how you remembered it in those days. Now we realise that probably it wasn't anywhere near the best in the division, let alone the world. But you remembered it as such, and you just wanted the best for your club. Now, things move on. We never really wanted to see the cowshed go, but that's got to be better. Although you do get you get wetter over there because the wind normally blows in there. And again, I think as I said earlier, the fact that not just putting a roof on a stand, you should be sort of designing it so that the people, the noise, the effect, the actual ambience of the place is something. But that will remain with those people that use it in those days. This will remain with me because this is what I've lived with. Yes, I will miss it, absolutely. I'll miss the ExEC Club as it is. In fact, we've got an EGM and I've decided not to leave, but I'm standing down this year because I believe where we've got to is a point in time where we've achieved what we've achieved by being where we are, and now it's right time for somebody else to form the next ExEC club or whatever, or VP club or whatever it needs to be. And there are younger people out there that got different views to me now. I mean, whereas I'm collecting memorabilia and putting it on the walls, that now is not probably what needs to be done if we have a brand new ExEC club. It needs to be modern, it needs to be in tune with what the club wants, what the fans want, what the membership wants. This was part of me and it'll always be part of me, but the next phase is going to be part of somebody else and their memories, and so we build on that.
Fantastic answer. And then the last one, this is the tricky one, everyone struggles with this one, so don't worry. How would, in a succinct, as short a way as possible, how would you describe ExEC City Football Club through its history, and how it is today? What is the character of ExEC City Football Club?
Always wanting, but never quite achieving, I suppose. We've always been supported well for what we are. We recognise what we are. We know where our roots are historically, our heritage and everything that is being brought together now. I think more people are realising that it's these sort of places that become the centre of people's memories. And again, we go back to memories. I suppose we realise that we're never going to be a Premiership club. We love, certainly I think we love having a stadium which is in the city centre, whereas a lot of clubs now are moving out. It's central to the community. I know we've got issues at the moment where we need to be talking to the community to ensure that what the community surrounds the stadium, etc., wants, and it all comes in. This could be a centre of excellence for not only children but for the aged. It could be deemed to be more than just a football club. If we're not going to make the Premiership, but we become a good League One club, then we can fill this stadium every week. We can achieve what we want to achieve, but be realistic in what we want. I think over the years we've never quite been able to do that for whatever reason. Financially, we're in a part of the world which is lovely to us and we never leave it, and it isn't until the northern players come down and then recognise that they never wanted to be this far north from their families, and then get down here and then find it, it's brilliant down here, I think I'll settle down here. But it's all too late for us, we just miss out. But maybe that'll change, I don't know. I think our situation now is we're bringing on our own kids. We've got some superb players coming through. As long as we can keep hold of them and they can underpin what we do here, then I think, whatever league we end up in is achievable. Premiership probably a step too far, but certainly League One, Championship. I remember Tiz and Steve Perriman, and it quite hurt me really, saying we'll probably only ever be a mid-table League Two club. And I thought, that to me, that's not ambition, that's actually accepting. But I suppose in retrospect, knowing full well that if you don't have a Grimesy every other year and you can't afford to to bring the best players here, then I think we've got to accept that that's where we are. We may make a League One, we may just make the Championship, but we may also end up in the conference for a season. And then, but that's the challenges we do. We were as excited coming out the conference as we will be going out League Two, because that's what football sides are about.